Welcome to the Venly Expert Talks, where we aim to inspire Web3 builders with great stories from great minds. I'm your host, Alexandra Ahrens, and I'd like to remind you that you can always reach out to us on Twitter, Discord, or LinkedIn with ideas for the podcast and questions for our guests. Welcome to episode 19 of the Venly Expert Talks. Today I am joined by Cory Hymel, Director of Blockchain at Gigster, and we are discussing the question, how can Web3 leaders design experiences for better adoptability? So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am happy to be on, and this is a great topic because it's one I'm incredibly opinionated on.
Great. We look forward to all those opinions. Great. But if we could start out, I would like to start with a little bit of your background in life and crypto and what led you to where you are.
Yeah, of course. So my background's in software engineering. Out of college, started a few companies, exited a couple, all around mobile and IoT. And then kind of left and went into more of the hardware world, doing kind of embedded system stuff. And then took some time off, traveled for a while, eventually relocated out to San Francisco. And this was probably 2015, maybe-ish. Dust the dust off the brain this morning. Around then, and was working in the city with Gigster actually at the time. And got introduced into what blockchain was, and got super interested in it. And we were super fortunate early on to get started working with Dapper Labs. And I got introduced to Deet Shirley over there, who's their CTO, and also the guy that wrote the ERC 721 protocol. And he helped kind of like foster a little of that like interest into the tech early on, and then since then have just been like incredibly infatuated by it.
Okay, great. Perfect. If you can also take us through the background and the purpose of Gigster then, just in case anyone's unfamiliar.
Yeah. This one's a cool one too. Gigster was founded about 9 years ago out of the Valley. And the two founders had this idea that the future of work was going to be remote. So they had a crystal ball or
truly ahead of their time.
truly ahead of their time. They said one, the future of work will be remote, and then two, like we want to work on cool projects, like we want to do emerging tech. And it worked well because in order to work on emerging tech, which means you have very niche skill sets that you need to do it, being able to work globally is really the only way to make that happen at scale. And so since then, Gigster's been investing heavily in basically building tooling and tooling in a platform to help manage distributed teams globally. And to tell everyone at the end of the day, like we're a data company, and we collect data on people and how they work and how they operate, and we just happen to build software, which is pretty fascinating. We also so I manage our academic partnerships with Stanford and Berkeley around the future of work and around how like the behavioral science around distributed workers and how can you create machine learning and AI tools that become predictive on how teams and individuals will be successful in the future based off like signaling functions early on in like the team's formation, which is pretty interesting work. But that's kind of like how Gigster approaches the space. We approach it from a very we're here to help facilitate and grow. And that is extremely, I think, pronounced in our Web3 work and what we're doing in the Web3 space.
Great. Then, can you talk maybe a little bit about the goals that Gigster has for adoptability specifically?
Adoptability of Web3?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes. Okay. Now the opinions can come. We're done with the facts. So, I look at it this way, and, and I've been very fortunate enough to help kind of craft some of the Gigster direction, for all of this. But in my mind, the idea of decentralization of individual ownership, is really the future. I have a friend named Dr. John Henry Kumpeter from MIT that, I was talking to him one time, and he said it really well. He said, NFTs are saving the internet from itself. Like we're at this huge and interesting precipice where, with Web2 and user created content was great, but in order to really transition into this Web3 in this new world where you can actually have individual, like verifiable ownership of digital assets, all of a sudden, like overnight, you have a world of possibilities from a user experience standpoint, from what it means, just even for like growth of new assets and new asset classes that don't have like negative externalities that get generated when they're created, and all of that being kind of like underpinned by like the blockchain and like Web3 and where we're going. And when I started to really get very passionate about it, that's when we started to push, I think, on the Gigster side, that like our message is that we are here to help drive mass adoption. As of right now, there's someone always ends up messaging and saying that fact you said was wrong. But as of right now, there's roughly 68 million active, crypto wallets. There's 7 billion people on the planet. So the amount of like, and that's 68 million wallets that did like $28 billion in transactions last year. So to see how far and how much room this space has to grow, it's mind boggling to see where we can go. And Gigster's position and what we're here to do, like I said, is one, drive mass adoption. And we help support the ecosystem and support the community by supplying engineering, like highly successful and highly managed engineering teams. And for us, we know, and like we know that like being successful in the Web3 space takes a lot of other support. You need great tooling providers like Venly, right? You need people that know how to do like Web3 marketing and community growth. You need legal advice. You need tax advice. We are building out a funding arm. We need education. And for us, trying to be the stitching that helps pull all these people together so that when anyone in the community has a great idea, we can help them through the entire process and be able to pull all of these people in to get people out to market successfully and kind of lower that barrier to entry. And that for us is the most important thing that we do on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent. Yeah. So kind of focusing in a little bit further on that even, how does Gigster help to, focus on designing better experiences? In what way are they involved?
And like that in my mind, I think is incredibly interesting. So I talked to a lot of large brands, large enterprises around designing for Web3. What does multi-year roadmaps mean for Web3? And the interesting part is, I said earlier, like there's a very, very small fraction of people that actually participate in it, right? I think everyone hears about it, but there's very few people actually taking part. And so how do we change that? And there's a couple things that we do. I think that one of the first mistakes I see everyone make when they come in and say, all right, I want to do an NFT marketplace, or I want to do a crypto thing. What they do is they go to OpenSea, they go and look at what is already out there, which is wrong, in my asterisk in Cory's opinion. Yeah. That's wrong, right? Because you're designing to a market that's barely, I don't know actually what it is, like 1% of what's out there. You need to be designing for the 99%. And you need to be looking at how do you create experiences and flows and things that make them feel really comfortable so that they will adopt it. Because the mental shift for someone that, let's say, is, I would even argue 25 years or older, to make the mental shift and say like, yes, I understand that a digital image has value enough that I'm willing to pay $100 for it. Even say that $100 for it actually is a major cognitive leap. It really is, because all the generations up have been, under this impression that everything you can copy and paste and share, and the web is all about that. And so in order to, so when they do purchase that, that's a huge win. And for us, and I would say us as being like you, me, everyone in the community, trying to reduce every bit of friction that helps that helps them feel comfortable making that leap, should be top of mind whenever designing. And that's again, when we say design, a better experience, design is not just UI, UX, right? Especially in this space, design is education, right? Mm-hmm. Design is transparency. Design mm-hmm. is providing your community support, providing them, stable and, transparent, again, stable and transparent, like roadmaps on where your business is going and the ideas that you have, because we've seen a lot of projects come out of the gate with very lofty promises of, buy now and in the future we'll give you this, which is fine if everyone was delivering. But from a design and how you, again, reduce that barrier to entry and reduce that friction for early adopters to help make, or I guess maybe the better way to say it is you need to reduce the barrier and reduce the friction so that early adopters, all they have to do is just make that mental cognitive shift that yes, digital assets hold intrinsic value, and then everything else is okay. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we push to everyone, and that, in my mind, is something that we can consistently and always do better with.
Yeah. Then one of the things you mentioned there was kind of, maybe, I don't know how to phrase it, false promises or not kept promises. Maybe including that, or if you can think of other things, what, in your opinion, are some of the other biggest hurdles for that mainstream blockchain adoption?
Yeah, there's a lot, right? I'm trying to figure out which way I want to take this. So I would say across the board, there's a lot of hurdles. And again, people will look at, people, when they look at blockchain, they need to realize like the time scale of the technology that we're talking about. Satoshi's paper came out in November 2009. So not even 20 years ago. NFTs arguably was launched in 2017. So the protocol there. Mm-hmm. So that's 4 years old. The really adoption and like major investment in the space really didn't even start happening until the beginning of 2021. So we're sitting on a tech that's, you can argue is basically like, we'll meet somewhere in the higher middle and say it's like 3 to 5 years old. Mm-hmm. And with any type of emerging tech, there's a lot of different hurdles that are going to have to come into play and when we say mass market adoption, I'm talking hundreds of millions of users. Mm-hmm. And those hurdles start at the bottom and go all the way up. And that's from, the core chains themselves being able to support X number of transactions per second, up to the tooling providers, like, this is by no means any type of dig on you or what's out there, but like there's always there's so much more maturity because I don't know how old Venly is, but you guys are definitely not as old as Google, right?
No, definitely not.
or as old as like major tooling, stuff that's been around for 20 years that everyone looks at and it's like, oh my God, it's so highly polished. It's like, well, yeah, they've been doing it forever. Give us some time. So I see the hurdles kind of going across the board, and there's obviously the scary ones that everyone brings up around hurdles from what's going to come from, lawmakers and how that might, put a damper or maybe help with it. And all the way culminating at the top that of what we talked about around like user adoption and education and helping them supply. But I think that really the big onus on a lot of it comes to the brands and the businesses. And these are, and I mean like well-established brands and businesses that are looking to get into the space. I think a lot of responsibility lies on them to create these projects and do them well and not just try to jump on some quick and easy, high margin revenue stream, but really look forward and say, like, how do we create some multi-year roadmap and a lot of deeper functionality to that, and, I'm like debating if I want to say this or not. I think two kind of like interesting use cases around that is that, I would say one that did really well is like what Adidas has done. Like they've continued to do drops. They've offered like merch. They've done like a lot of partnerships and stuff. Like they've continued to grow their Web3 initial, NFT offering into a lot more, which is incredible. So it's a ton of value back to the community. People are, they don't feel like they don't feel cheated or anything like that. And then on the other side of it, one that I think could have been done better. Mm-hmm. If you could see me, I'm like maybe air quoting. I saw that Budweiser did a drop, and they basically, I think they sold out in like an hour or something, and it was like $3 million or something. And they basically just like launched an NFT and said, all right, we're done. Like what? Like these people paid money for it. Like people are purchasing it. Like, yes, maybe people are purchasing it for nostalgia, but I mean, if you're not providing any type of utility or like long-term value beyond just like as a collectible, in my mind, that's kind of lazy. Again, I think that the biggest hurdle is going to come from these large brands taking responsibility and creating actual multi-year thoughtful Web3 strategies. And if they do that and they do that well, it's going to help make the entire next 2 to 4 years way, way easier for the tech.
Mm-hmm. There are many people that are obviously still very much against NFTs. You already spoke about that. That we kind of forget about or ignore. Are we just in our own bubble with that, or are we biased from working in this space? But how can we kind of bring them in? How can we make them do that switch that you were talking about?
Yeah. So I would say, first of all, like, of course we're in a bubble, right? Like for anyone that works as close to this tech as we do, like, I mean, and you almost have to be like, you have to be in somewhat of a bubble, with any emerging tech when it's coming out. Like I was very, very early on, to the IoT space, like super, super early days. And so it's super helpful to be in a bubble in that it keeps you motivated to take a tech that the market is expecting to move faster than what it like physically or mentally or theoretically can, and stay passionate about it over time. So do I think we're in a bubble? Yes, I think it's a great thing. However, I will say that being able to take an objective position and say, okay, from the outside in, I could maybe see how this is a little crazy, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But but that's totally normal. And the way that we help bring more people into the fold, or indoctrinate them into the church of blockchain, is sorry. There's a storm and it just like blew a door. Shut. No. Oh, did you hear that or no? Oh,
I did, but I was commenting on your church of blockchain.
My church. Into the church of Satoshi. Yeah, maybe a bad analogy, but how we bring them in, I think is a couple different ways. The first one being is that making it relevant, right? Like everyone's got different interests, everyone's got different habits or things that they find interesting, and as the blockchain and Web3 space continues to grow, there's going to be start covering a lot more of those. I'd say that a lot of the niche places and really a lot of the big places that are being covered by NFTs right now have a ton of room to grow. So as that continues to go, more and more people are going to start adopting to come in. I think that as we continue to help kind of like strengthen the security and ways to verify, I think the authenticity of projects is going to help. Whenever I talk to people that aren't in the space or in any way really connected to it, like they usually have two things to say, like, do you own a Bored Ape? Like, because that's the ones they see are hundreds of $1,000s, which everyone listening, I don't. I wish. So the first one is I always say no. And then they say, well, I heard someone like lost a ton of money or there was some rug pull. And that's usually like the two comments that people have. And I think from being outside, like, media and news and stuff always is able to latch on these like kind of compelling things that people will click on and get super interested in. And from the bubble perspective, I think that we're able to see really past that, but people on the outside, they do see that. So as a community, we are we have a lot of responsibility to help find and build tools and build processes and platforms to help mitigate that risk, so that when you have the non-tech savvy, and I'm not even saying like not even like a non-crypto savvy, but like a non-tech savvy person coming into this, like you have to find ways to protect them, right? And as much as people want to knock on, blockchain is supposed to be decentralized and anyone can do whatever they want, and how dare anyone try to put restrictions on there? Like, yes, I totally get it. I totally support that. But in order to help really drive mass adoption for this tech and make it be around for a long time, we as a community have to start building tools and processes, like I said, to help protect people that have no clue what's going on. Like if my mom went on to OpenSea, first of all, she would have no idea how to create a MetaMask thing and no idea how to go purchase crypto and do it. But last of all, like she would have no clue how to, look at a project on OpenSea, join the Discord, make sure there's actually people and activity going in there, check the roadmap, look at their Twitter to make sure that they have some established following. Mm-hmm. And then there's definitely no way she's doing enough to get on any type of like a whitelist to get to these projects. So that from that point, I think that if we don't start doing better around that stuff, we're only going to make the walls of our bubble thicker, mm-hmm. And then we get into the echo chamber, and then it's get a bit of a spiral.
Bit of a spiral, yeah.
Bit of a spiral, yeah.
Definitely. Okay, good. Then, when we are talking about designing experiences specifically with adoption in mind, on the flip side of this, what experiences are you referring to specifically?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest one, which I believe is being closely solved as we speak, the biggest one for the longest time, and I'll talk about this in the context of NFTs, is the purchasing process. Being able to go and buy an NFT like you had purchased something on Amazon, like that smooth, I haven't seen anywhere. Mm-hmm. People will probably say, and I've used NBA Top Shot. Like I think the Dapper Wallet, they did a great job. That one I think is very, very smooth, but it's still like nothing has reached that level of where I can just connect my credit card mm-hmm. and have the same thoughtless purchasing power that I have as my Amazon app on my phone. Mm-hmm. And that one for me, I think is the most interesting one because as soon as you remove that, I think the tidal wave of people coming in is going to quickly find what the next barrier is, right? Mm-hmm. And on that next barrier, I think the wallet portion, I know that Venly has a great wallet around like custodial wallets. I think that being able to offer custodialship is incredibly important, again, in the context of mass market adoption. And this is again, another one where I go back and forth with a lot of people on where they're like, well, if it's custodial, then you don't really own it. Cause if you don't have the keys, you don't have the NFT. And I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but like, go talk to the 60-year-old person standing on the corner and we're trying to get all of these people to adopt this tech. Like there's going to be different tiers of it. But the majority of people, aren't going to want to go and write down a whatever 20, 30 password thing. And if for some reason their kid accidentally throws it away, then they're completely out of luck. Like that just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. I guess I'll start with the question with I think that there's two with the full purchasing experience. And this is, and I mean, purchasing experience in the context of mass adoption, meaning that like, I know that there's like MoonPay and ramps and transaction stuff, and they work only in like a subset of the US states anyways. But it's still not like I really don't want to keep referencing Amazon, but like it doesn't equate to like existing Web2 checkout flows as one. And then I think that when that wall breaks and that becomes easy, the logically next portion will be the wallet. And then once that is like completely solved, which I think it basically is, but like, and then after that, that is going to break, and then there's going to be another one, right? And that's how emerging tech goes. It's just consistently water breaking through one barrier and then slamming against another one, and then everyone's like, all right, well, we got to solve this, and then it's the next one.
How do you feel gamification fits into this whole conversation?
Yeah, gamification is an interesting one. I think that it has a ton of near-term value in that gamification is a great utility and incentive driver layer on top of, I think, where NFTs are right now. Being able to create gamified experience that are underpinned by digital assets is a great way, I think, to bring people in. It's a great way to bring people in and keep people around. And doing that has shown, I think, through the early embryonic stages that I would say that we're in right now, like it's showing to be like pretty helpful, right? And when we say gamification, I think it covers a lot. And some people would look at gamification and say, well, gamification, does that mean like actual games? Like Axie Infinity, or does it mean like a gamification in that if you collect these certain NFTs, then you get a new NFT? Those are both gamification. And I think that gamification itself has shown to work extremely well in Web 2. And, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work in Web 3. But yeah, I think it's important, especially from, like I said, getting people in, but also keeping people around, I think is really the nuancy part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with that, we've seen play to earn, learn to earn, participate to earn, all these different things. How scalable and or future-proof do you feel those are? Do you see other things coming up, taking their place?
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting question, because I think I'm sure that there's I'm sure there's a professor of psychology out there that would be able to probably maybe better answer this than I can. But what is interesting about all of these things is that we've had versions of them throughout the tech life cycle, I would say, right? And if I look at it from a more like abstract point of view, is that in real life, does participate to earn or learn to earn work if you're actually getting fiat currency? Like, sure, people are incentivized for payment. Mm-hmm. And then we've had similar systems in the Web 2 world, in that you grind in a game, or you take surveys or something and you earn some type of like asset that has a level of value to you. Mm-hmm. What I think is interesting here is that in the Web3 world, you can earn tokens, or you can earn assets that are able to be used in a wider context outside of what you could do in Web 2. And what I mean by that is that if, for instance, you grind away in game A, you have like none of that transfers into game B, or that would never transfer out to go purchase some merchandise from some random clothing company, right? So it's you have that same like was it the dopamine hit of earning within the game itself, but it's not transferable out of there. So with Web3 and being able to to earn, or whether that's participation or playing or learning, to be able to earn some asset that you can then take outside of the silo of the walls that you earned it in, and spend it and actually have upside and value of it outside of that, I think is really, really compelling. And that I think will help drive adoption of both the tech, but also make those mechanics of, like you said, learn learn to earn, participate to earn, play to earn, I think that it will make those mechanics be add a lot of longevity to them over time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you see any, or could you make an educated guess, I suppose, on anything similar that might be coming our way?
Like similar to play to earn, or similar to
other tactics, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, so as the tech continues to grow, there's a lot of I think there's going to be there's a lot of bridging between in real life events and being rewarded with digital assets. So when we say participate to earn, or learn to earn, or play to earn, the initial, I think, connotation is that you're doing that within the digital space or within some of these platforms. But I think that there will be a huge market segment, if I can say that, that grows with doing in real life activities that unlock digital content. I think that area of the market is going to be very interesting to watch over the next few years.
Good. Then on a similar vein, or continuing that flow, I guess, how do NFTs and such related experiences fit into mass adoption right now?
Yeah, so NFTs, I think, help with mass adoption because they are the most similar thing to owning individual assets in physical space, right? It's the easiest thing for people to grasp onto. It's the best thing to unlock utility and have a lot of different forms, from collectibles to voting rights and governance and things like that. And for mass adoption, I think that they were really key in driving a lot of like comfortability, because I see them almost as like the second product to launch from blockchain, right? And the first one being like crypto. When I say product, I mean like a consumer good,
right?
And the first one being cryptocurrencies. So that came on board, and like every banker or person in a household that like manages finances was like, all right, I kind of get it, but everyone else was like, seems just like a stock, and therefore I don't want to touch it. And then when NFTs came along, that the product number two, it seemed much more like obtainable and mentally obtainable. It's like, oh, these are, they're pictures. Like a Bored Ape feels much more tangible than like DeFi trading, or like having a Bitcoin that you can't see. So that in my opinion was huge for helping again drive that like mental shift in the market to help them see and realize like the intrinsic value that digital items can hold. So I think they're incredibly important. As far as the experiences go, I think we're just scratching the surface of what could be done with NFTs as far as like a user experience and like what a lot of the utility and upside is going to be. Because I'll say one point on it that's fascinating. I was talking to the VP of product over at Animoca brand, Sean Dudley, who's incredible. He was the most eloquent speaker we've ever heard. I think it's just his accent. But he said, what's so interesting about NFTs, and if you look at them as like products issued from companies, is that typically companies in the consumer-driven world and physical world, they create products that degrade and erode and will eventually wear out over time. NFTs don't degrade. These are products or assets that get sold that are there for forever. Well, hopefully forever, because I think if they weren't, that'd be something catastrophic happened. But that are there for forever. So if you're looking at it from like an experience perspective, you have to design and think that, okay, I'm offering something to someone it's never going to break. It's never going to degrade, right? It's always going to be there. So how do I use this? How do I use these as foundational products to grow experiences for customers over time? And that is for a manufacturing economy, that thrives on creating and offering new products constantly to replace old ones is a pretty profound shift. And that to me is also going to be something incredibly interesting to watch over the coming years as far as how companies design experiences with that little, I say little, but very large difference in mind.
Yeah, no, that's actually a very good point, because definitely in the world we live in today, it's more things that'll be thrown out in the spring cleaning. So
Exactly.
how do you think that meshes? Yeah.
Meshes in what way?
Sorry, yeah, with how brands handle their customers and
yeah. No, I think it's a tough question, right? And I don't have an answer. I don't know if anyone does. I don't think there's ever been a time in a consumer economy where businesses have ever willingly said, "I'm going to create something that will last forever." Like why would you? You just, if you sell it once, you just cut off your revenue stream. Things in physical space are. This is one where I might get the hate mail after, right, from some people, but companies design things to fail over a certain period of time, right? It's just how. It's just what it is. It's not a bad thing. It's just
planned obsolescence is proven. I don't think you're going to get hate mail for that.
Yeah. All right, yeah, that's when I get all the mail of like, I knew my iPhone battery wasn't running as long. Like, okay. I think that how it meshes is yet to be seen. But what I do think is that it can be very complementary, in that companies can continue to offer products in the way that they do, but they can complement them with assets in digital space. And be able to augment their current offerings and their current experiences that brands have or that customers have with them through these new channels. And that part, I think, will be pretty interesting to see how brands do that. The interesting part of all of that, though, is that it still relies on two things. And this is where I think that we as a community have to be very outspoken and opinionated. And that in order to make this all work, one, companies need to be responsible I don't want to say over profitable, because that's ridiculous. Companies are there to make money. But so again, the whole idea of like shareholder first was like very like 80s and 90s, right? Companies now there about churning out profit. I get that. But I will say that going forward, to make all of this work, is that one companies need to be responsible about how they think about creating these offerings that will be there for forever. And on the flip side of that, like we as a community and really us as a larger market need to hold them accountable for when they don't, right? So if a large brand does a project and then they just sell it and leave because they wanted like their brand moment in the space, like people should be pissed about it. Like it shouldn't just be like, oh, I've got my Budweiser token now. It's like, dude, we should expect so much more from the companies providing. So that it's a slight rant and maybe a slight jab, but the meshing point will be interesting to see indeed.
Yeah, I think you'll get more hate mail about the jab than you will about the first bit.
Yes, no, yeah.
All right, so on the kind of the answer to what you were just saying there, then, what are some tips you can give if you could sum up a few important things for brands or projects? What can they do to improve adoption and make people happy in the space?
I usually charge for this, but you can have it for free.
Appreciate that. Just kidding. Between us.
No, just between us. Yeah. And chat or whoever is listening. So I think whenever I'm talking to brands and they're like, Cory, like we want to do Web3. I'm like, all right, cool. Glad to hear. But like, what are the thoughts? And like, what things should we be aware of? And when we say like the biggest hurdles for brands to move into Web3, you can kind of flip that into two kind of segments. One being, what are the hurdles from a technology perspective? So internally, how do you get ready for Web3? And this can go all the way down, like, how do you choose a chain? How do you choose how your finance department recognizes the revenue from it? How do you organizationally get, your IT and DevOps and security teams on board with what you're building? Like that, that's a whole conversation in of itself. The other side of that is how do you plan on the customer side? And I think that we've talked about that a lot, but if we wanted to kind of distill it down in something that I always tell brands is, one, the first thing is that you need to approach this with the utmost transparency. You need to come to your customers and say, like, look, we're doing something new, and we're here to try it out, and here's like our ideas and what we want to do. And when I say transparency, I think that the biggest thing is providing roadmaps. I think is incredibly important. You're asking people to again, as we said before, take that mental leap and give you dollars, their hard-earned dollars, for some digital good that you're producing at a 99.9% margin, and they expect to get a level of return from it. And one of the best ways to do that is to be able to provide at least a roadmap so people know where they're going once they get in. And I always tell companies too, like, if you can't plan some form of a activity or value unlock, for every month of the next 12 months, or at a minimum the next 6 months, we should probably wait to do something. Because if we can't even dream up cool stuff to do with, the magic that is NFTs over 6 times, like then we probably should pump the brakes just a little bit and kind of think through all of this. And I think that's the biggest advice from it. And, the other side too, I think to go with that is that, one, always be able to create a roadmap. But this is another interesting insight that I had. So I was talking to Richard Walker, who's the strategy principal for blockchain at Deloitte. And I was asking him, like, how do you get how does an organization, like a large organization, a historic organization or something that's been around for a long time, get ready for Web3? And he had a very unexpected answer, but incredibly insightful one. And he said, one of the big things to do for an organization is, one, like, get people ready to fail. Like, we're like, this is a very, very emerging technology that has like dollars at stake where you're offering some compelling products, right? But no one's figured it out. Like, no one knows. I mean, we're in the early days of like AI and ML, and for like a large brand that sees NFTs and blockchain and Web3 as like new channels to engage customers, like there's gonna be hiccups. There's no two ways about it. And so, getting organizations and brand in your company ready to experiment and ready to be okay with trying something and it not working, that's huge. And if you look at large brands like large historic, like Coca-Cola, and we would bring Budweiser back. They tried something, maybe it didn't work, but at least they tried, right? And internally at their organization, I hope they feel great about it because they did go out and explore something new, and I hope they continue trying. But for a lot of these brands that are so used from a marketing and consumer perspective of always being right, getting okay with trying something new and being wrong is incredibly helpful. And that one, I think, for brands to implement Web3 is, to circle it back, is, one, do internal education and get people on board and ready to go to know that we're trying something new. And then the second one is being able to actually just think of a valid roadmap for at least 6 months. I hope everyone's a year, but it should be at least 6 months.
Yeah, fair. I think that's, really good way to distill it down and give us a takeaway here. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So where do you see the space in 5 years' time? What aspects are going to survive? What do you think will be forgotten? Obviously, very much an opinion here.
Yeah. Well, that is one that I consistently ask myself, and I try to ask others, and I don't know, you know what? And I think the best way to think about it, or the way that I try to think about it, is, what was like, where was machine learning 5 years after it hit mainstream, right? And 5 years after hitting mainstream, like, it was doing cool stuff, but it wasn't to the initial crazy expectations that the market had for it. And so if I akin that to where we're at today, I think that majority, and I say that, I would say that where we are now for the remainder of 2022 is that a lot of new entrants and people coming into the space and learning about NFTs and blockchain and Web3, a lot of them go to Ready Player One. They go to Mark Zuckerberg's VR, future. And I think that that's where a lot of people think that it's going and where it will be in 5 years. I beg to differ. I think that in 5 years, what we're really going to see is, one, a drop of the actually had this as a trivia question the other day. I don't know if NFTs is an acronym or an abbreviation.
It's an acronym.
So we're going to see a lot of drop. Yeah, so we're going to see. Okay, so we're going to see a lot of dropping of the acronyms and a lot of stuff. Like, I don't know if people will. I hope people aren't saying NFTs. I think people will just refer to them as assets or digital assets, and that the idea of, like, even referencing the blockchain will probably go away, right? Like, no one, I don't talk about. I'm like, oh yeah, Facebook and its Postgres database. Like, no, like, people. You don't talk about that stuff. Like, it's just, it becomes so synonymous with the value offerings on top of it that you don't have to refer to it. And I think in 5 years, that's where a lot of this is going to be.
Okay.
In that the major shift will be the change in just how people reference and talk about the things. And then, with that too, I think that the interesting, like, cross-pollination between different platforms and being able to create value in one and then move it to the other is going to see more adoption. And yeah, it's going to be cool. I think that even my prediction for 2022 was that 2022 will be the year of the enterprise for blockchain, being led through entrance into the space through NFTs. And as that continues to grow in 2023, I think that's going to really define where the space goes pretty quickly. So that's, yeah, I hope that is helpful to some. I always feel like I'm sorry to append my answer earlier of things people usually ask me when they're outside the bubble. It's, have you heard of, or do you own a Bored Ape? No. Have you heard about the hack? Yes, sure. And then what token should I buy?
Yeah.
Which I also don't know.
Yeah.
So coming on the edge of where we'll be in 5 years, everyone take it with a grain. This is an opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Good. So what advice would you give to Web3 developers looking to make a difference in the space?
That is a great question. I mean, so Web3 developers are in a great opportunity, and that is that for developers in the space, there's still a lot of opportunity to make huge impact, right? It's not like you're not a developer walking in and saying, like, I want to do cloud computing, something that's dominated by giants like Amazon and Oracle and Google, and making a dent in that is near impossible. You're walking into a space that, one, is extremely, extremely collaborative and inviting and welcoming. I've been to I haven't participated, but, walked through and seen a bunch of the hackathons at the conferences. Like, everyone is there to help each other. Even companies that on paper you would look and say, wow, they're competitors, are helping each other, right? Like, it's all about the growth and the adoption of it. So from a developer standpoint, you're walking into a great community and a great opportunity to really make an impact at an individual contributor scale. But then also, there's a lot of great projects that are there that are, either DAOs or open source that are looking to fundamentally improve a lot of the lower level infrastructure and stuff that you can be a part of, that will have, that long tail satisfaction knowing that you were part of this from the beginning. And the other part too is and I know this has been something I've said a lot, but also for Web3 developers coming in, it's like, be part of projects that you believe in, and also have like standards, right? Like, don't just take a paycheck to do something because it's there. Like, if the project looks like they're trying to scam or rug pull or they're not committed, like the onus is on you as the enabler to help provide guidance, education, and help kind of like deter that, because you are going to be the impact that will have on the community and the tech and the adoption as a whole is the ripples are profound. So I push everyone to do that. And yeah, I think that's the biggest one. The opportunity for devs right now in Web3 is endless. It's incredible to see, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Anything to plug? Anything happening for you or Gigster that you want to tell everybody about?
No, I appreciate the time to talk. If anyone ever wants to chat about NFTs or Web3, or if you want to, you feel free to reach out on Twitter or something like that. Be happy to talk through it more.
Awesome. Good. And last question, we have to ask everybody, who should we have on Venly Expert Talks next?
Oh, that is a good question. I just did a live stream the other day, and every guest that I had on was fantastic. But I will say that since I commented on his eloquent speaking and accent, I would like to nominate Sean Dudley, VP of Product at Animoca Brands.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad that he came up again. Good.
Yeah. I've got a long list, so if you need some, I've got quite a few people that I could refer.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. We'll check that out. Great. Then that's about it. Thank you so much for taking your time, and especially, I know, since you're busy and going places. And
of course. No, absolutely. Happy to be on. Thank you so much.
Thanks. All right. Well, if we get to talk again soon.
Of course.